Hey guys, welcome back to etlqalabs. So in the previous session, we have seen the difference between we try to understand the fact and dimension table in the data warehousing, right? So in continuation with the previous video, if you have not watched the previous video, I would highly recommend you to go and watch that video so that you will understand the concept behind the fact and dimension table in the data warehousing, right? So in data warehousing, we have only two type of table in the dimensional modeling, right? Fact and dimension table, and the whole data within the database is stored in these two kind of tables, okay? So today we are going to cover, you know, very famous and important aspect of the dimension table, right? Which is and this particular topic you can expect in any kind of interview, data warehousing, in I mean ETL interview. If you are going for QA or development or BA, they will definitely ask this question, and you should be able to answer it as part of your if you are working into data warehousing environment, right? So that is the reason I tried to cover this. And guys, this particular video I have tried to put in the information in this Excel sheet. I do not want to create multiple so many pager of PPT to explain you. I think the reason being, this picture, what I have drawn is, if you remember this picture, you will be able to answer almost all the questions related to type 1, type 2, type 3, right? Type 3 SCD, right? So here, right? So it's very easy. That is the reason I have tried to put it here. And once I explain it, I think it will be very easy for you to pick, think about this picture, and then you can explain, right, in interview. So let's try to understand a little bit concept about ETL. Again, guys, about ETL, I have created a couple of videos in the ETL testing. You go and watch there. I think I have covered the basic concept of the ETL and data warehouse, not data warehousing, but ETL mostly, right, as Informatica. So you should be able to understand that. So I will recommend that you go and watch if you're not aware about it. So let's start then. So what is ETL is? ETL is extract, transform, load, right? So what is happening is we have the multiple source systems here, and then data is passing through the ETL process or ETL system. These are normally the jobs, right, which are designed on any kind of ETL tools, or it can be the homegrown tool. And then once the data is passed through this ETL, it will be loaded into target table. So target table is ideally in data warehousing, the data warehouse, right? So that's where all this concept of slow changing dimension or fact and dimension comes, right? So data warehousing. So here, whatever we are talking at the right hand side after ETL, right? All this side, these are the data warehouse tables, okay? Which means the designing of these tables is based on the dimensional modeling, okay? And the left hand side, in this example, I have taken the normal transactional table, okay? So this also you can see OLTP tables, okay? OLTP, and here, the data warehouse, okay? OLAP you can say, all right, guys? So let's try to understand what is SCD, right? So SCD stands for slow changing dimension, okay? So within the dimension table, this is the category, right? So slow changing dimension. We have got mostly two kind of dimension. One is slow changing dimension and other one is fast changing dimension. So today we are going to talk about slow changing dimension. And when it comes to slow changing dimension, we have couple of them, but I think most important one are type 1, type 2, and type 3. So people expect you to know this, and also this concept should be very clear, right? When you say you know what is type 1, type 2, type 3, right? So after watching this video completely, if you pay the full attention, I think you will be able to answer any kind of question. Okay. Now in SCD we have got, I would say, multiple. We have type 1. Uh, we have in fact type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 6, right? All these different kind of type SCD type tables are there. But most important, as I said, type 1, type 2, type 3 are there, right? So let's try to understand the type 1 first, right? So type 1 SCD is like it basically corrects any kind of error in the data warehouse table, right? In data warehouse, right? So if you see in this example, right? So this is the record before event, right? So let's say this is the record that is there in the data warehouse, right? So you see here the employee ID, employee name, salary, effective date, and location. These are the five different columns, and the data when it was loaded, right? So this you say employee name, right? So the last name it's coming as double TIA, okay? But actually the exact name should be a single T, not double T, okay? So Bhatia like this. All right. So what to do in this case, right? So in this case, we are going to implement the SCD type 1. So SCD type 1 basically corrects the data, okay? Which means it is one off. Once we correct the data, right? So it is there can be aspect, you know. So it is like once the data is corrected, there is no further, need of any kind of manipulation here, right? So this SCD type 1 tables are mostly SCD slow changing dimension. These are basically used for correcting the data. Okay. So for example, this was before record, and now in my source I got the correct record, okay, Bhatia in the correct format, correct, letters here, Bhatia. So what after loading this data, so after that I am going to run my ETL job here, right? Once I run the ETL job, what will happen is it will simply override this particular record, right? So it is always in overriding in nature. So it is overwriting it, right? So if somebody is asking what is the type SCD type 1, so in SCD type 1, you can simply say that the data that is coming from the source will simply override the previous record, previous data. So this is what the nature of the overwriting, and this is mostly used for data correction in the warehouse table. All right. So I hope this is clear, guys. Type 1. Now let's go to type 2. So type 2, what will happen is basically there are certain cases. In this case, since this is error record and we corrected here, there is no need to keep the history, because keeping the history in this case will be of no use, right? Because it is anyways the previous data was incorrect, right? But there are certain cases when we definitely would like to track the the previous changes, what was the previous change, and then we would need to keep that as part of our history. All right. So for example, if we have the same record, right? Let's say this was the record employee name, employee ID, employee name, salary, and location, and then this is the date of joining or effective date. All right. What will happen is, so what I will do is, this was the record, and now this particular employee, right, employee number one, his location is going to change. All right. So his location is going to change. So here, the event one, his location is changed, which means I got a record which is having this kind of record, yeah. And this location will be, for example, let's say in this case, it will be United States. Okay. So what will happen is it is very important that we keep track of location of this particular employee, because if tomorrow you want to check the audit, or you want to check the history, what are the locations this particular employees have been transferred or has been located, deputed, then you should be able to track it. So let's say this particular record is coming, and the location coming as United States, right? So what will happen is, um, before that it was India. Now when this record came, right, so what will happen is the location got changed to United States. And there is one more thing that will happen here. Okay, what will happen is the date, right? So we will also introduce three different dates, three different columns as well. Okay. So one will be from date, and second will be to date, and then third one will be the active flag. Why we are going to introduce is because this is concept of type 2, and to keep the history we need this definitely these three columns, right? So I will try to explain it what these columns are, right? So first column is from date, right? So when you say that effective date is for example, in this case effective date was 1/1/2010, and then this particular employee got transferred to United States, and on which date? He got transferred on 1st of 2012, 1st January 2012. In that case, what will happen is I will try to close this particular record. So close means I will just try to end date this, right? So from date will be obviously the date of joining. I mean from the date that he was in India, started his job, and then once the date when he will be transferred, one day before, that will be the closing in India, right? And then he will start a new date, new start date in United States, and then so for example, in that case, what will happen is he transferred to United States, and then again he transferred to United Kingdom. So he transferred to United Kingdom on 1/4/2012. So what will happen is this particular United States date will also be closed. All right. Closed, which means one day before it will be closed, and it will start a new journey from new assignment in the United Kingdom, UK, right? So 1/4/2012, and you see that the current record, where is the current record? Current employee location is the United Kingdom, right? So his current location, United Kingdom, will be having the to date as the infinite date. Infinite when I say 2090, right? So this is again, we have to put in some date. So we have just put 2099, which is an infinite date, all right? And the active flag against this particular active, because this is the current location of the employee. So I will say this is the active flag. I will say Y, right? So this flag is also important. These three columns we have to introduce as part of when you are implementing the type 2 dimension. Okay. And if you see, these are N, which means they are not active, they are already closed, right? So these locations are closed, and it you can see that his location, his tenure in India from date and to date, US from date and to date, and UK from date and to date. It's still he is working in this location. So his end date is infinite. I mean, until he is moved to some other location, it will be still there. The infi I means this particular 2099, right? This is for the easy understanding, and then active flag will be Y against it. So any point of time, if somebody is asking, you know, uh, this particular implies current location, you can always go and check it. Yeah, active flag Y, that is the location of that particular employee. Okay, and obviously you can track based on the dates also. You can track the location where he was before and all, and you can also get all the information about this particular employee. So guys, this is type 2 implementation, and this is most widely implementation that is being used in the ETL, right? So specifically when we have the slow changing dimension, on those cases we are going to use this kind of this is the type 2 dimension. Yeah, so type 1 and type 2, these are most widely used implementation in the data warehousing. And so I hope you understood that, right? So in type 1, no history preservation, complete overwriting. Whatever data is coming from source, that will be overwritten. Okay, and in type 2, we are keeping the complete history. Okay, so we do not have any limitation of history. So how many times the things are changing, we are going to keep the all the history here, right? And to identify which one is the correct record, active flag should be Y, right? That is the current active record. Correct, so that is a this is how you can understand. Okay, I hope this is easy for you to understand. Okay, now type 3. Okay, So type 3 is, I think, in this case, what we have done is we have inserted the multiple records, right? For each of the location, when there is employee location change has happened, we have introduced uh, a single, record here. This row, this row, this row. Three location got changed, right? So here there are three records. If there are five location change, then there will be five records, right? Obviously, the active one will be one only, but we have to keep all these records here, right? So what we are doing is actually we are increasing the records vertically here, right? Stacking here. Now type 3, what will happen is we are actually not going to increase the rows, right? Rather we are going to expand the columns, right? So if you see here, right, what has happened is, so here what I have done is, this was the record before, okay? Employee number one, employee name, location was India, and this was the date. Now, all of a sudden, this employee got changed from India to United States, right? So what we have done is we have actually introduced a new column, current location and previous location. So for location, only we have we have actually created two columns for this particular location itself, right? So previous location and current location, which means actually we are expanding this table horizontally, right guys? Because we are actually expanding the number of columns here, not the number of rows like here, right? So number of columns we are expanding here. Similarly, if something else will change, let's say the name might change tomorrow, right? So then we have to say previous name and previous column. So this is very cumbersome sometime, and because you cannot really keep increasing the columns. In that case, for every changes you are going to introduce a new column, which is really difficult, right? So that is the reason I think the type 3 implementation is very rare in data warehousing, but this concept is still there, yeah, so that if there is at all any need, or if there is we do not really want to preserve the um, history for all the events, then this implementation is used. One more thing to note here is, what is the major difference between type 2 and type 3 is, one thing that you have seen is the table is growing horizontally, vertically here in type 2. So for each location there is a different record, right? One, two, three, three records. Now here, sorry guys, what we have done is here is we have we have not added any rows here. But let's say here what we have done is we have increased the horizontally scaling up of the columns, right? So we have not inserted any rows, but the same rows, but additional columns. Again, what will happen is, let's say it has changed from United States to India. Sorry, United States to United Kingdom. What will happen is, this will come to previous location. Okay, so this will come to previous location like this, and then this will be United Kingdom. Okay, United Kingdom. Okay, guys. So what will happen is, United Kingdom will be here. All right. So what exactly? You see that there is a very, very big drawback here. If we have a need to com keep the complete history, then in this case we are losing actually. We are losing. We already lost if there is a change. So what it is doing is, in type 3 we are actually capturing just current location and the previous location. We don't know what has happened, previous to previous, what was the previous to previous location and before that, right? Nothing, we don't know. So in type 3, we are actually losing the history. So that's why type 3 is partial history. Okay, type 3 contains the partial history. It does not contain the full history like type 2. Okay, so this is another disadvantage, and sometime it can be advantage also, because we really don't want to keep all the records, right? Previous records and all. So in that case, we would definitely. So for example, I will say that, some real-time example. For example, if somebody is unmarried, all right, and for this particular employee, let's say marital status is unmarried, Okay, this employee unmarried, and then after few years, if there is this employee gets married, then what will happen? He will be married. He will be married, right? From unmarried to he will be married. So what it is important is we just capture the previous record, what was that and what is now, right? So, I mean, I'm just telling you example. I mean, there is no need to keep the entire history record. He again, uh, get divorced and again got married and all these things. We really don't want to capture all those, right? So we can probably keep two instances, one now and one previous, because containing data, keeping the history data is also costly affairs, isn't it, guys? Because it is obviously storing, taking up spaces and all, right? And the performance also matters for the data warehousing, right? So we have to implement type 1, type 2, and type 3 based on our requirement and what is needed, right? So for example, if there is no history required, we want to completely overwrite, go for type 1. If you want the full history, everything, and then we will go for type 2. And then if we want only current and the previous record history, then we will go for type 3. All right, guys. But if you see, we are actually using the type 1 and type 2 most probably in any of the project. All right, guys. And so this is all about slow changing dimension, type 1, type 2, type 3. And guys, try to remember this diagram. I think this is very important. And once you, memorize this, it will be very easy for you to explain in the interview. Okay. So with this, I think I'm closing this session, and thank you for watching. And guys, if you have not subscribed my channel, please go and subscribe as a token of appreciation, because I am putting a lot of efforts to bringing all these videos. So it will be really helpful and motivating factor for me if you are going and subscribing this channel. All right. Thank you for watching, and see you with the next video. Until then, happy learning.